Ladies and gents, welcome to Suji Reaction. This is Trope Talk Paragons by the channel Sarcastic production. They're good, they're inspiring, they'll help the helpless just because. They're staggeringly out of place in modern nihilistic grimdark. That's strong. I mean, yeah, okay. In today's culture, usually goody two-shoes is perceived like, what an asshole, something like that. But I don't think it's because the world, in today's world, characters like that don't work. It's just like, people are not writing it the right way, I guess. They're using lots of examples of the past, which is kind of feel like cringy by now. Yeah. Today we talk Paragons, the definitions, the difficulties, and the potential for cruel character flaws. Yeah. I love trope talks. I always love, talking about the, all the different tropes here and there and go into detail. I always, realize something like, oh, look at that. I never thought of that. So it's always fun thing to, react to. I wrote quite a few Sarcastic production videos already. If you haven't seen them, check out the cards. The playlist are great for it. Check out the cards too, like Inter Student, CGB Great, Here Zoo, Kuzgazard in a nutshell. And yeah, let's do this one.
Here's something that might surprise you. I am a huge sucker for classic Paragon heroes. What can I say? I like characters that are good. I like seeing them make friends, help people, turn enemies into allies. I like Paragons. They're hopelessly cliche and have fallen out of fashion, but I love them anyway. Now this might be surprising because, as most of you know, I spend a lot of time talking about how realism can add creativity and meaning to stories and how textbook characters tend to be pretty boring, and, I stand by that. But the trick with the Paragon is that their character is almost never as important as how they affect other characters. What is there to say about a Paragon? They're good, they're friendly, they're forgiving, except in the case of truly evil beings. They might have a tragic backstory or a grand destiny, but practically speaking, they're good and open and try to do the right thing. They don't tend to struggle with the morality or the motivation of their actions, and their character development tends to be limited to finding new causes to champion. But what does that do to the characters they interact with? See, the Paragon hero does something to the people around them. They inspire. Sometimes their open friendliness ties the group together, sometimes their reflexive desire to help the helpless starts rubbing off on their more jaded friends, sometimes the sheer trust they place in someone makes that person want to fulfill that trust. You look at this guy and you just end up getting a big old case of the warm fuzzies just by the sheer positivity radiating off of him.
Sometimes I want to punch you in your perfect.
Hold up, that Paragons, first of all, the word Paragon just means that, great example of something. But in the, obviously in the Hollywood and everywhere, whenever somebody talks about Paragon, it usually means paragon of good. So, which is the really good character? Like, they do the right thing regardless of what. They don't let their own personal gain in front of doing good. They'll always choose, people's, I guess, safety and things like that. What's best for people and everyone around them as a paragon. Them being, charismatic and, affecting people around them, it's not really a necessity, is it? Because, even somebody who just, stay with themselves and doesn't do much, for the, inspiring area, even the Iron Man, like he's showing here, even he's a paragon, because in the end, he killed himself in the end. For the greater good. He is a paragon. Doesn't matter if he's an asshole when you talk to him. That doesn't change the fact that he's a paragon. So paragon is really loose term because paragon just means the great example of. It's a great example of good. So he's that, Batman is that, even though he's dark, lives in a, his bat cave or whatever. He's still paragon. There.
Sometimes that happens. Actually, a lot of the time. Now, the point is, this character, this Paragon, is usually mostly important for the effect they have on the story as a whole. Sure, they have a unique-ish personality in there, but their behavior is generally going to be very predictable. There's only so nuanced a good person who does good can be. But what that character does do that's a little less predictable is draw other, more nuanced characters into the wake of their do-gooding. There are two main examples of this, and they're both really obvious. There's Superman, specifically from the cartoon, and there's Captain America from the MCU. Both start off doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, and there's Captain America.
Yeah, I guess in a way when you think about it, Captain America is Superman of the Avengers and Marvel series because apparently Captain America is the guy of the Avengers. That's how it goes, right? He's the main guy. So Superman is that of Justice League in a way. Both are goody two shoes in a way. But yeah, her point about how in the modern world everything's so dark and everything. I see that, but I mostly blame that to the writers. Writers always takes past writing and just somewhat of a copy pasted in order to show some goody two shoes character, and in our back of our mind we always have seen that, and we find that as a cliche, so we just like, what an asshole. If somebody writes a good character, if it's a really good character, nobody's gonna think like, oh, this is not a good character. So I don't think that today's genre is more of a dark thing, nihilistic thing. No, like Captain America, the Avengers was just a recent thing. Everybody loves Captain America. Everybody loves to watch Captain America in the Avengers and everywhere. I mean, Captain America is one of the main characters to see in the entire Avengers thing, other being Iron Man, I guess. These are the two main characters, if you think about it in that way. So if done right, people love Paragon, goody two shoes type of characters. But that's the thing, today's writers don't write it that way. It's way easier to write some kind of a dark and complicated emotional character than just write a completely good character, because you really have to think about how differently you're going to write a good character. While just emotionally dark character, conflicted character, is kind of easier to pull things from other genres, so it's easier to write.
America from the MCU. Both start off doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do and they can do it, both end up inspiring an increasing number of other heroes to follow in their footsteps, and both end up sort of leading an expanding crew of heroes, none as Paragon or as idealistic as they are, but all inspired to try and do what they did. This doesn't get much focus in the Justice League cartoon, but Cap Civil War actually kind of dissects this trope in a pretty clever way. If you've somehow managed to avoid seeing that movie, you might want to skip this part, but basically, literally everyone in this movie is of the opinion that, of course he's doing this, he's Captain Goddamn America. The only discrepancy is whether or not they're siding with him. The ones on his side are following him because he's Captain Goddamn America, while the ones opposing him are like, there's no use debating this with him because he's Captain Goddamn America and he's certain he's doing the right thing. Now,
I mean, that is so true, right? When it comes to Captain America, that has been the feel in this movie and throughout the Avengers and everywhere. Like, should we debate this? Is Captain America? He's probably talking right. He's probably doing the right thing. I mean, that's what he does. I mean, there is no other motive there. He's doing something good because he's Captain America. That is so strong character trait, right? I mean, that is just... I mean, when it comes to Superman, you can always think like, yes, Superman wants to help around people, but sometimes his goals can be like, personal, like saving Lois Lane or something, putting Lois Lane's safety over everybody else. Sometimes that happens. When it comes to Captain America, that's not the case.
it's a matter of furious debate if he is in the right, but the fact is that everyone involved in that whole fiasco is involved because of Cap, either because they're on his side or they know the only way to stop him is by brute force. Now, Cap is actually supremely oblivious to the sheer weight of charisma he's lugging around, case in point, but more specifically, when he asks the other heroes for help, he's disregarding the fact that most of them will side with him just by virtue of the fact that he's Captain Goddamn America, regardless of what cause he happens to be championing. It doesn't seem to occur to him that he probably inspired most of them to do everything they're doing. Tony's having to appeal to people's bigger picture sense of logic, but Cap just has to flash his stoic handsomeness in their direction and they're gravitating to his side like it's a thing.
That was the main point of the movie though, right? Like Captain America, he's just Captain America, he's just good. He doesn't need to convince anybody. That's what his side was. While Iron Man, Tony Stark basically was doing like, this is more of a real world, the more nihilistic view, like she talked about in the description of the modern world. Like, the world doesn't revolve like that. This is more of a real world, more, cynical view of things and things like that, more realist view. That's what Iron Man was pulling. Like, this is, everything doesn't revolve around like Captain America thinks. This is real world. We have to do things in a more realistic way. That was the Iron Man's approach, and that's why he was using logic and explanation and talking as a factor to bring people towards his side. But Captain America's whole thing was just doing a good thing, doing the right thing. I don't need to explain you. I'm doing the right thing. I'm Captain America. That was the whole thing.
To do. Because he's the focus, because he's the one who inspired them all, he's also the linchpin that makes them fall apart. Everything that happens in this movie happens because Captain America is so much of a presence that everybody is orienting themselves around him by necessity. Hey, I think I finally figured out why this wasn't branded as an Avengers movie. Alright, spoilers done. The short of it is, Civil War is something of a dissection of the hero inspiring others effect and where it can lead. Now, of course, it's less of an idealistic situation, but it's still a remarkably interesting look into the potential power and devastation that a Paragon can wreak through sheer force of personality. And whenever this character appears in anime specifically, the most common thing for them to do is to turn all of their even slightly redeemable enemies into allies within the space of a season or less. The thing is, the most interesting part of the Paragon character is that they're basically a catalyst catalyst for character development in other people. We've touched on how this can turn villains into heroes and heroes into more heroic heroes, but they can also sometimes trigger wacky existential crises and straight-up villains just because of their sheer goodness. Going back to Cap for a minute, if we look at the first movie, we find this moment where the Red Skull is monologuing about how they're both gods among men, yada yada yada, to which Cap responds with, "I'm just a kid from Brooklyn." And this makes Skull go berserk. See, Red Skull sees himself in Cap, or rather, sees what he should have been, a textbook Ubermensch with the looks and power to make the title appropriate. So when he hears Cap's "just a kid from Brooklyn" thing, his ego can't handle it. It's a classic case of evil can't comprehend good, which is a trope on its own, but basically Cap's sheer frank humility causes him to actually lose his cool and break down. And this is actually pretty typical in the cases where the bad guy turns into a good guy later as well. Usually something the hero's doing is totally weird to them, and their difficulty puzzling it out leads to them re-examining their priorities in some way. Or like Scully up there, it makes him self-destruct. But see, the Paragon themselves is a confusing archetype.
Yeah, I mean, in that case, I mean, it's usually like, first of all, they've been blinded by the hate and all the darkness of the world, and they became this kind of evil thing. They're like, you're powerful. Of course, you want to be some kind of a powerful god-like being, like rule over people. Why are you so nice and good? Why are you just saying you kid from Brooklyn? So that puzzles him, that angers him, and that's why he punches him. But eventually start to, now chain reaction in his mind has started. Starts to realize things like, how he's been wrong and things like that. And over time, they changes, I guess.
As we've defined them, what makes them the Paragon is their general goodness and their tendency to accumulate people trying in some way to live up to their example. But there are a ton of different Paragons in literature, and they're all very distinct characters. They're not all nice, they don't all trust easily, some are doing good simply because good needs doing, and some are rising in the face of concrete adversity. I mean, for crying out loud, Son Goku doesn't even do good on purpose. His motivation is and has always been to get stronger and fight people. There's no moral compass involved. And as crazy as it sounds, on the opposite end of the Paragon spectrum, Batman is a Paragon hero. He knows right from wrong and does the right thing because it's the right thing to do. That's really all you need. And with the extended Bat fam, it's obvious he's got the inspiring part down too. So given the crazy range of characters...
Batman doesn't need to do good, right? He doesn't need to do anything. He's rich. I mean, he doesn't need those things like saving people or something. He doesn't need that. He can just, go to, I guess, some Europe and just hang out their whole life. I guess race around racetracks with his F1 car with ladies in each arm and things like that. Just be drunk or whatever to drown his sorrows or whatever. But no, he wants to do good. That's why he does good. So that's a great Paragon, right? But I guess, in the Goku's part, it usually goes like this. There's one saying like that. Doesn't matter what your intentions were. In the end, what you do is what matters. So if Goku doesn't want to help people, just wants to get stronger, but he does that in a way that helps people, I mean, does it even matter? He's a Paragon in that sense. So I guess, Paragon just means what is the best example of good. I don't think Goku fits that because he's not a great example of it, but in the end, he helps around the people. So I guess there you go.
Archetypes that fall under the Paragon umbrella. How do you write a Paragon? I mean, we haven't even really been able to define Paragons. We've just identified a way they're used in the story with relation to the other characters. That doesn't tell us anything about them as a character, it just gives us a few traits that can each manifest in a whole bunch of different ways. It seems like it should be the easiest question in the world to answer, but the more we look at what makes a Paragon character, the less we seem to know. See, the Paragon actually has a lot of leeway in how they're characterized. We only have two defining traits, that they generally do good when good can be done, and that other characters kind of flock to them, whether as allies or enemies or something in between. This gives us a ton of possibilities for the actual character so long as we adhere to those two traits. They can be bright and optimistic or struggling with trauma, open and trusting or a little more closed off. They might have a dark side or just be a straight up nice person with no caveats. The Paragon can be almost anyone so long as they act, Paragon. And this also means...
Yeah, I guess inspiring someone goes hand in hand with just point blank doing good, regardless of your personal character. So if some character does good, even put good of the other above his his personal need or something like that, then that person is doing good regardless of what. That is automatically going to inspire people. So I guess Paragon just means that he puts good of the world, good of the people above anything, even his own personal gain.
Means they can be flawed. I know, crazy, right? The desire for realistically flawed characters seems to have pulled the image of protagonist away from Paragon, but all you need for a Paragon is a person who does the right thing whenever they can. That doesn't mean they're a perfect human being. For an example of a flawed
Paragons are not Mary Sue, right? I mean, they don't have to be perfect, just do good.
Paragon, let's look at cartoon-era Superman again. Supes is a lot of things, hero being the most obvious, but he's not perfect. In fact, his biggest flaw is an inability to trust other people to do things right. See, Superman is the most powerful hero on Earth, and he knows it. This awareness manifests in positive and negative ways. On the positive side of things, he has this tendency to fling himself in the way of stuff that could seriously hurt his squishier teammates or the world at large because he's very aware of how fragile everything is. But on the negative side of things, he kind of puts himself in charge of everything because he believes on some level that he can take care of everything. See, Superman never internalized the idea that he might not be able to do everything on his own. Even Batman is more of a team player than he is. Unfortunately, this becomes dangerous when he disagrees with the League, because whenever that happens, he does things his way anyway. Superman doesn't really
But is that really wrong? I mean, look, that is as a whole thing, hurting his teammate emotionally, sure, but is he speaking the, false here? Is he speaking false? He's not. He's kind of true, right? I mean, Superman is way too powerful than other people of the Justice League. I mean, that is kind of true. So if he does that based on the truth, is he really wrong there? He wants to take the brunt force of the enemy attacks, so his teammates don't get hurt unnecessarily because he can take it, while his teammates might not. So, rather than, hurting somebody really badly, I'll just take the damage. Is he wrong there? I don't think he is, because even the movie, Justice League, the movie came around where Superman just goes ballistic. Every Justice League member has to attack him, but he's way too powerful. That's the whole thing. Superman is insanely way too OP. So is he wrong there though? I mean, just because he realized that he's way too powerful and he should sometimes do things on his own rather than involving his team member because his team member gets hurt, doesn't really, I don't see that as much of a flaw, because if it's the truth, it's not a flaw.
Respect anybody as an equal, and as a result, he's pretty quick to drop the team player thing when he thinks he could do a better job himself. This is mostly visible when Lex Luthor is involved, since Superman is pretty quick to assume Lex is up to no good, and even though he's always right, Lex is very good at playing him and making him look like a paranoid demigod holding a grudge. Superman is still unconditionally a Paragon hero, but that specific character flaw makes him actually very dangerous, as seen in the popular alternate universe where he decides the right thing to do involves murdering someone and taking over the world. So yeah, even Paragons can be less than one step away from becoming horrible, horrible dictators. It's just...
Come on, man, that's a big leap. People make those leaps, but I don't like that. Just because he doesn't have tendency to think way too deep. He's somewhat of a gullible, let's just say. Superman is gullible sometimes. He doesn't have a tendency to see major plots or see flaws in things. Like, if I do this, people will see me in a bad way. Does not make him wrong or in his path to become dictator or something. He is right when he thinks that he's way too strong and he should take the blunt force of it. He is right when he thinks that Lex Luthor is evil, because he is evil. If somebody does wrong 9 out of 10 times, it's not bad to assume that at the 10th time when Superman assumed he's gonna do evil, Superman is not wrong there. But that doesn't mean he's just gonna take a leap one day that maybe in order to save humanity I have to kill them. That's a big leap, right? I don't see that here. To me, Superman is not Paragon, because sometimes his personal gain, like saving Lois Lane or something, takes precedent over saving the world in stories here and there wherever I've seen. I think that is the only thing that could not see him as the Paragon. Otherwise, I don't see those flaws.
Just a matter of putting them in situations where their personal definition of the right thing to do doesn't necessarily mesh with ours. And that's actually one of the most interesting things to do with Paragons. See, it's never really a surprise when your Paragon does something good. Sometimes stories will put a Paragon in a situation where the right thing to do might be dangerous or personally offensive to them, but because they're Paragons, they're gonna do it anyway. If you really want your Paragon hero to act unpredictably or dangerously or in a way that has your audience going, "Ho, don't do it," you put them into a situation that appeals to their humanity, not their heroism. Superman kills President Lex Luthor in the alternate timeline because Luthor had killed the Flash, and Superman, guided in part by grief, in part by rage, and in part by a misplaced feeling of responsibility, decided the right thing to do was prevent Luthor from ever doing anything that bad again. He subsequently took over the world because he decided the right thing to do was preventing anyone from ever doing anything that bad again. Back on the Marvel side of things, Cap kicked off the events of Civil War because his brainwashed buddy was in danger, and he decided the right thing to do was to protect him, even at the cost of his friends being stuck in a super gulag. See, Paragons can actually be really dangerous, and therefore, from a writing perspective, really interesting, because if you can get them to think that the right—
Look, if Superman's canon story is that alternate universe one, then I can see what she means there, if that's the canon. But as a whole psychology goes, I don't see Superman being, taking a leap like I should, take over the world and become a dictator because any other person ruling is not going to rule right or something like that. But if that's the canon, there is a story like that, I don't know what to say then. But yeah, I don't, as a whole psychology, if somebody has the mindset like that, doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to take over the world, because that's where the mind is going to go.
Right thing to do is something objectively dangerous or bad, they'll pursue it with the same single-minded stubbornness they do all their good deeds with. Now this actually gives you an interesting possibility, making a Paragon an antagonist to your hero. See, when the story isn't centered on the Paragon, they can unsurprisingly come across as pretty annoying. They've got this tendency to assume that their own moral compass must be universal, so if your protagonist happens to be in more of a gray area, they might take offense. And if your character has the misfortune to be something generally considered evil by default, like a demon or monster, a Paragon who sees them as inherently irredeemable might end up being their greatest threat. See, Paragons are almost never written with...
Again, who is Superman? Let's just talk about this. Who is Superman? He is Superman. He's like a godlike being. He doesn't take, sign, grants from president when he wants to save people. No, he has to take, effort by himself. Like he does all the things because he thinks that this needs doing. All right. So, saying that this kind of superhero are kind of in the danger of deciding the world is in a way the way they think, their moral compass is the main compass, but that is how things go because they are way too powerful. Whenever they try to help somebody, they uses their own moral compass and things like that. They are not going to take a vote from people like, should I do this, should I do that? I mean, when they see that, world should be, I should save people based on what I think, that's not a far-fetched from what it is. Saying that, this guy is an asshole. He's a paragon, but he's an asshole because he uses his own moral compass to think that's how a world should be. But yeah, he's way too powerful and he is the one who takes incentive to save people with his will. He decides what to do, what not to do. He's already doing that from the start.
Any kind of character development that forces them to re-examine their definition of good. When it comes to right and wrong, they're intensely stubborn, and any kind of stubbornness in a character has the potential to become dangerous in the wrong situations. As a result, it's actually very easy to show the flaws in a Paragon character without compromising their Paragonness. And this is important because Paragons, traditional, shining, perfect Paragons, have fallen out of fashion as a result of the trend towards gritty, flawed realism. So as a result of that shift, we get to see DC's greatest Paragons, Batman and Superman, each lose their ingrained sense of right and wrong and start conforming to the letter of their characterization but not the spirit. Case in point, Batman killing in the more recent movies. And that's kind of, it's not really what their characters are for. Alright, simmer down. My point is you don't need to sacrifice a character's Paragonness to make them less than perfect. Paragons already aren't perfect. They're stubborn, they tend to think of themselves as the highest authority on their own behavior, and they can be really dangerous if that clashes with reality. They're not gritty flaws.
Yeah, so now I get it. The perfect Paragons that is fallen out of fashion is that goody two-shoes perfect Paragons who does things what they think is right, where people just call like, oh, you're not going to decide what's right for me. What an asshole. What you think is right, is that it? That kind of thing pisses off in the modern culture people. But the fact is, like I said, they are way too powerful. They save people based on what they think. And they have that power. They are not going to take vote with people. So just saying that this guy is an asshole because he is doing things based on what he thinks and what he thinks is right using his own moral compass, he's doing that from the start. He's that powerful, he can do that. In the end, he's doing good, that's what it matters.
But they can be devastating, and you can tell a lot of interesting, and yes, dark stories about a Paragon's influence on their world without sacrificing their Paragon nature. So I guess maybe instead of making all our heroes and villains gritty, flawed, moral gray areas, we could start throwing in some characters that are dangerously certain that they're doing the right thing. I don't know, could be fun.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, the question like Paragons, break out of the group and do things based on what they think, and that's how somehow they're bad. Like, you decide doing that. Who gave you power to decide it? You didn't ask me or anything. You didn't ask the group. You saw the world in your vision and what should be right, and you did that thing based on that. Yeah, but that's how these superheroes does things. They don't ask the government or people to take a vote, or they don't ask other people to and their opinion. They always go with their moral compass. Doesn't matter how much annoying it feels to you. That is how things go. In the end, these superheroes are their own judge and jury and even the executioners. So it shouldn't be that, oh, what an asshole. This is why the characters don't work in the real world, because people see what an asshole. He's doing things based on what he thinks. Yeah, but that's how superhero goes. He's way too powerful. He's not gonna go around and take vote. He's gonna do things based on what he thinks. And sometimes, yes, I can see that how this can sometimes become dangerous and someone can be misled. But if that's the case, that's a flawed character. But as a whole trope, Paragons just being goody two-shoes doesn't necessarily mean one day is going to decide that, world needs saving by, I guess, imprisoning them or making them slaves or killing them. That's not how things are going to go. That alien mentality, like aliens are going to come and, I guess, enslave everybody to save us from ourselves or something like that. That's not how things go. Alright people, that was Trope Talk Paragons. If you like very exciting, like, subscribe, check out the extended, there's a link in the description. Check out the cast for all the different playlists, check out the end cards, and I'll see you next time.